Jimbo, can you hear me?
I got you, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. I'm with the Chicago Sun-Times, so it's not
Oh,
all
great.
Pittsburgh people.
Okay.
To have waited as long as you waited, and to find out a year ago January, and to still be waiting because of the way the world went, what has that process been like for you? How is it? How have you tried to stay patient, and what's it going to feel like in a couple of weeks here?
Oh, well, I think what's it going to be like in a couple of weeks is just going to be a tremendous experience. And, waiting for so long, I think even makes it that much sweeter. So, that process, around 20 years has been, I don't want to say frustrating. I think maybe a little more disappointing because you kind of never got to the next level from a to the semifinal side. So you just kind of waited. And then I think then you got to the point where he's like, well, I don't want to think about it anymore, but it was always in the back of your mind. And then when this, when this whole Centennial class came up with the blue ribbon panel, talking to Dan Pompei, I thought, maybe we had an opportunity here, and then it just worked out. So, I mean, I'm just so grateful to be part of this class and be included in the Hall of Fame with these great players. So, I mean, it's just been a great, incredible experience.
Has the last 18 months been hard at all, or knowing that you're in, is that a different feeling?
No, I think once you're in. I think the not really frustrating, but I think just the anticipation of thinking we were going to have it last year and then not have it, and not really disappointed that we didn't have it. It's just we knew it was obviously the right thing to do with the pandemic. Wanted to keep everybody safe. So, I think it just made the wait with all of us in the class of 2020 that much more special.
Thanks, Patrick. Christopher, you're up. And Jerry, you're next. Thanks.
Hi, Jimbo. Thanks for taking my questions. I'm making it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I got to ask you a Pitt Panther question because played with with the Panthers. You guys weren't in the ACC. You were probably in the Big East or independent at the time. What do you think about their chances now in the ACC? I know they made it to the Coastal Division Championship a couple years ago and played Clemson and got blown out of Charlotte. Do you feel like this year, if you look from afar, they could actually get back there?
Oh, I think so. I think, with the veteran quarterback they've had, it's his fourth year as a starter. So I think he's going to, do a great job. And, I think Pat Narduzzi has done a tremendous job. I mean, we've had our ups and downs at Pitt and from a football record perspective, but I feel like, last year, I thought we had a really good opportunity, but then this pandemic hit and, people were opting out, and it just was kind of a weird kind of a scenario. So I think this year has a great opportunity for this team, and I'm really looking forward to that.
And if I could ask a quick follow-up about the Chicago Bears, 1985, what was it like playing with Sweetness? Walter Payton.
There's so many things have been written about Walter Payton, and you've probably heard a lot of them, but I just thought he was just a tremendous person. And for me, a role model. I mean, the way he conducted himself as a professional, the type of teammate he was, the leader he was. I mean, it's just, I miss him every day. And I was very lucky because I got a chance to spend a lot of time with him because, Matt Suhey, who's my presenter, and him were very close. And, in the old days, nobody had a single room. The only one who had a single room was Walter. And he was always next to our room, and he was always over in our room a lot. So I had a chance to really get to know him, and he's just a tremendous person.
Thanks, Jim. Congratulations again.
Oh, thank you.
Jerry, you're up, and then Jeff Heflin.
Hi, Jimbo. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I want to have a Pitt-centric question, too.
Okay, Jerry.
Going back to when you were recruited from Freedom High School, what was it like recruited in those days? Who was the lead recruiter that enticed you to come to Pitt? Why did you come to Pitt? And what other schools were you considering at the time?
Oh, that's a great question. And coincidentally, the guy that recruited me was Jimmy Johnson, who is in the same class as me in the class of 2020. So a little bit of a homecoming. I got recruited almost everywhere, I would say, and could have went anywhere. But, Pitt just won a national championship in '76. My senior year in high school is '77. So I I just felt when I got there and visited the place, it was just like home. And you know, I was just attracted to the guys and the winning tradition and, you know, Coach Sherrill and the whole 9 yards. So I didn't go to Pitt for any other reason other than the guys that I had a chance to meet and ultimately ended up playing with. And I'm just so glad that I did.
Thank you.
Jeff, and then Brian.
Jimbo, congratulations. I have a similar question to Jerry, except I want to go back a little farther. What were some of the characteristics or traits you took from growing up in Beaver County that really stuck with you and helped you in your pro career?
You know, I got asked that question a lot. I think it's because of, you know, the work ethic that I had, growing up. I just really kind of, you know, not really inherited it, but my parents, right? My dad worked in Armco Steel for 34 years. My grandfather worked there for 44 years. You know, every male member of my family did. And, you know, my dad would work, shift work for 34 years. He would come home in the morning and when he worked night turn, he'd take a shower and go back out in the Sears and Roebuck moving truck for another 8 hours. I mean, when you see people like that did that for that long, you know, my mother worked at JCPenney part-time to get a little bit of extra money for everyone. We didn't really like it that much because every stitch of clothing we had was from JCPenney. But at the end of the day, you just saw how hard your parents worked to you know, create a better life for their children. And I think you want to kind of, copy that and say, hey, I want to do the same thing. Because, you know, if you do that, good things will happen. And I think that's what I learned most from growing up in Beaver County.
Brian, then James, please.
Yeah, Jimbo, I also wanted to build off Jerry's question a little bit. I was looking back in the archives today of, you know, when you were getting recruited out of Freedom. And it sounded like there in, I guess, mid-February, right before you were official to Pitt, that Penn State made a late run at you. There was even a mention of Joe Paterno trying to steal you away in the final days or final hours. What do you remember about of all of that? I don't know if they called it a recruiting saga back then, but what do you recall from that time in your life?
Yeah, you dug that one out there, Brian. That's true.
That was 1978, in a few articles after talking about the Big Daddy D at Freedom.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you remember that nickname or not either.
Oh yeah, you bet. Chuck Lucidor is my high school coach, and he's the guy that came up with that. Excuse me, but yeah. You know, Jimmy Johnson recruited me. He was a hell of a recruiter, and he was down at my high school, you know, practically every other day. And, you know, Penn State didn't really recruit me that hard. I just think in those days, Penn State just felt like they could just, you know, show up and, you know, get anyone, right? And you know, Jimmy Johnson and I had a great relationship. And at the end, you know, I think I met Coach Paterno when I went to their football camp. And then Bob Phillips was the guy who recruited me. And I think I saw him maybe one time during the entire football season. And then the Friday, or I should say the Monday after I visited Pitt, that next Friday, Penn State was my last visit. And I walked in and, you know, into the office, they called me to the office and it was Bob Phillips. And he said, "Are you ready for your visit?" And I said, "No, Coach, I'm going to go to Pitt." And he goes, "Okay." I thought, man, that was easy. And then that night I got a call from Coach Paterno, and, you know, just tried to influence me and talk me out of going to Pitt. And, you know, I just, like I said, Pitt was not about anything else other than the guys that I got a chance to meet when I first got there as a recruit, and then the guys ultimately I've been playing with. So, you know, that's the reason I went to Pitt.
James, and then Alex next.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, Jimbo, very curious to hear your take on the game. Obviously, it's changed immensely since you played in the 80s, primarily, both from a physicality standpoint and a rules, how it's been made safer standpoint, and then also the actual product on the field, where in the old days, it was set up the pass with the run. Now it's kind of flip-flopped, and it looks a lot different. And would you rather play today than back then?
Wow. I think the biggest thing that changed really for me, I mean, there's a lot of tough guys in the NFL right now, and there are a lot of tough kids that go out there and they hit every day. And, I don't think that really changed. I think what's changed is, they're protecting the players a lot better, which I think is really important. They're very concerned about head injuries, and that's extremely important. So I think the precautions that they've put in the game, especially with the quarterbacks and, a lot of the targeting calls and all that kind of stuff, I think has made the game safer. And I think it's been a great addition to it. I think what's changed a little bit is, when I got to the Bears, and the whole time I played there, we had 6 weeks of two-a-day practices in the summer. And that really, I think, really beats you up a little bit, and nowadays they don't do that with the collective bargaining agreement. I don't think they can have any 2 days anymore. Maybe they have one a week or something. But our training camps were hard. They were tough, and they were kind of survival of the fittest, right? So I think you were really, hardened when the season started, right? And maybe that's why you see, maybe a little bit better play early in the season back then than you see now, because guys just aren't hitting as much in training camp. But let me tell you, there's some tough guys that are playing out there, and I'd love to be teammates with all these guys are playing today.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Yep. Thank you.
Alex, and then Paul.
Mr. Covert, congratulations on becoming a Hall of Famer. Hope to see you soon in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, Alex. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. You're a Pennsylvania native, so I have to ask you, the steel curtain of the Pittsburgh Steelers from the 80s to 90s to now, do you believe that they've lost that blue-collar mentality when it comes to hard work and dedication? And flipping the script, you're a former monster of the Midway. What are your expectations for Justin Fields in Chicago?
Great questions. I think growing up in Pittsburgh, I was I'm still a huge Pittsburgh Steeler fan. Grew up in Pittsburgh. Joe Green was my hero growing up. Roberto Clemente and Joe Green were my two heroes. And Joe Green was the best football player I ever saw. And I wanted to line up next to him, right? And play the other tackle with him. And when I was a kid, I used to dream about doing that. And I said, well, if Joe Green can play to his 15th or 16th year, man, I can line up right next to the guy, right? And so that was always kind of a dream of mine. And I just looked up to him so much. I told Joe that. And that's why I wore 75 in high school in a Pitt, but I couldn't get it when I got to the Bears because someone else had it, They don't buy numbers like they do today. You had to kind of, you had to do that. So, but that team, that 70s, 80s Steeler teams are some of the best of all time. And I don't know so much about the work ethic. I think this league hasn't really changed as far as toughness and physicality. I think they're protecting the players a lot better, like I mentioned earlier. And I think that has had a lot to do with making the game safer. And I think that's in addition to that. But I mean, there's still some hitting out there, and those cats can run, So I mean, it's something that I've always I like to watch football because of that, because of the physicality of it. What was your second question?
My apologies, sir. You being a former Bear, I was wondering what your expectations of Justin Fields.
I think Justin Fields is going to be a tremendous player. I mean, I am so excited that they drafted a quarterback in the first round. They drafted someone that knows how to win, that has shown his toughness as well. And I'm really looking forward to some good things for him. Quarterback is hard because you just don't want to, throw right from the, frying pan into the fire. You want to make sure he's getting some good, a little bit of tutelage at first. But, there's going to come a time pretty soon where he's ready. And I think he's going to do a phenomenal job.
Paul, and then Raphael.
Jim, congrats on making the Hall of Fame, sir.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
I got a question for you. We look at the 1985 Bears, maybe one of the greatest football teams of all time, 15-1, and obviously you won the Super Bowl. When did you realize that team was going to be special?
When I realized that, I think it was the year before when we got to the championship game in '84, and we went out to San Francisco, and Jim McMahon was hurt, and we were kind of lacking that component, but our defense was still playing great. And when they beat us up pretty bad, after the game, they were like saying, bring an offense next time. And, I think that was a motivating factor to the time. Right after that, we went into off-season workouts, went into training camp, and you could just tell this team was special and had a chip on its shoulder, and that they were ready to start playing tough and claim what was ours that we felt we should have been able to take in '84. And we went back out there in '85, and we brought an offense that time, and showed that. And I just think that team then decided to step up and be part of the lead in the NFL. And I think it all started back when that happens. And that's typical with a lot of teams that, it happened with the Giants when we beat them in '85, right? I mean, in the playoff game, they came back the next year and won the Super Bowl in '86. It takes a time where you almost get to the top and you get knocked down and you realize how hard it can take, the work it takes to get there.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Raphael and then Chris Daly.
Hey, Jimbo, this is Raphael with the 3-point conversion. Congrats on making it.
Hey, Raphael, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm from Chicago, and
all right,
just knowing, just growing up and listening to all the stories my father would tell me about, players. I know offensive lineman wasn't that popular, of course, except for maybe a Jerry Kramer. But when you came to Chicago, of course, you were beloved. Jimbo, everybody loved you. How did that feel, becoming like a household name in Chicago, being one of the favorite Bear players, knowing that back then a lot of offensive linemen didn't get a lot of love or praise?
Well, that's a great question. I still don't think an offensive lineman get a lot of love or praise, but I'm just, what? I look at Chicago like this. I'm sitting in Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh right now. I look at Chicago very similar to Pittsburgh, right? It's just much bigger, and you got a lot of neighborhoods, ethnic neighborhoods, different types of people that all live together, and they got one thing in common: they love the Bears. And when you think about the Bulls winning 6 championships there, it's still a Bears town. And so I just feel like that's why the '85 Bears are so beloved, because they brought something to the city of Chicago that they never really had before. Last time was 1963, and so I think for me that would make it, because you got that blue collar work ethic, the people that feel are hardworking Chicago people that wanted to relate to maybe someone like me that came from Western Pennsylvania, steel mill kind of work ethic kind of time. And I just kind of related to that. And it's, I just love the city of Chicago and the fans there.
Chris Daly, you're up, and then Jake.
Hey, Jimbo. So you're one of the most dominant football players of all time on one of the most dominant teams of all time. And now you're a dominant businessman. So what did the game of football teach you about what's yet to come in your future post NFL career with your career in business?
Oh, what a great question, Chris. You know what? I think a lot of the things that you learn in sports, hard work and dedication, and leadership, and a lot of things that you learn are very transferable skills. And, I try to look at the work ethic and leadership and things that I learned as playing professional sports and try to translate that to the business world. And I've been, really fortunate to be successful doing that. And I just think that, those are not cliches. I mean, those words are, you got to kind of live by them. And when you can do that, and you can show people, those types of skills, then, they're, again, very transferable, and you can be successful in the business world. So, that's what I've tried to do, and it's worked for me. And I think it works for a lot of guys that play in the NFL.
Jimbo, are you good for about 10 more minutes?
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Thank you, sir. Jake, you're up, and Chris Osborne then next, please.
Hey, Coach. Congratulations, first and foremost. Very happy for you.
Hey, Jake. How are you?
Sorry. I'm so sorry, Jimbo. I am in 2 calls right now.
No,
I'm
that's
in
okay.
Cower on my phone. I'm on my computer. I just mixed it up.
I don't
so
look
sorry.
like Cower. I know that way better looking than he is.
Jimbo, congratulations. Sorry about that. Congratulations.
That's all right. That's all right, man.
You got to play with Walter Payton, and I would kind of touched on that just a tiny bit, but you were drafted by the Bears, and you knew going in, obviously, that you were going to get to play with Walter Payton. So it's a bit of a two-part question for you. First of all, what was that feeling like when you're like, oh my God, like you're thinking I'm getting drafted and I'm going to go protect and help Walter Payton? And second of all, kind of touching on that, how did he help you grow? Because obviously he's one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game. I'm sure he had some great insight for you.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier. When I got to the Bears, we just weren't very good, but I didn't really know any Bear. I didn't know of any Bear players. I kind of knew Jim McMahon because, that was a year before, and on a couple All-American teams with me, and then I only knew Walter Payton, right? And so when I got there, from the very first day, he treated everybody like family. I mean, it didn't matter if you were a first round pick or a free agent, he treated everybody the same. And he spent time with you. And he just had this unique ability to talk to you. And people say this all the time, and some of it's genuine and some is not, but talk to you like you're the most important person in the world at that time to him. And that's a gift. And I think that, that along with, the true pro that he was, and how he conducted himself in practice, and how he went all out in practice, and how he did all the things you need to do to be a great player. I looked up to that and said, I want to pattern my career after someone like him. And I was just lucky to have him as a teammate.
Chris, and then Larry.
Hey, Mr. Jimbo, congratulations. Chris
Hey,
from
Chris.
Sports and Cultural Sports Media. So I have a question about accomplishments. You only get to keep one, I get to keep the other, all right? So holding Lawrence Taylor to 0 sacks in 3 matchups, or winning 1986 NFL Offensive Lineman of the Year. You get one, I'm taking the other. Go ahead, sir.
You know what? I would probably take the Lawrence Taylor, because it's 3 games and they were all rather big games. And it's nothing like saying that, I just felt like, in order for us to be successful and in those games, I had to do my job, and I had to do it well. And when you get dependent on to do something like that, and you don't get much help to do that, you can't depend on anyone else. You got to depend on yourself. And I think, offensive lineman of the year, a lot of times you get recognition, you're part of a team. And that's the same thing there. But I just feel like a 3-game span like there, that was a lot of fun for me to play there. And the team depended on me to play well, and I did.
I thought that would be your answer. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah.
Larry, you're up.
Hey, Jimbo. It's obviously been a long time since you guys played. I'm wondering how much of your mind will be on some of your teammates who are not doing as well, specifically Steve McMichael, some of the others who have health issues, and how much your mind will be on that. You're lucky enough to be able to walk up there in good health and pick up this great award. So I was just wondering about that.
Well, thanks, Larry, for the question. I think, definitely, I'm a big Steve McMichael fan. He was one of my teammates that, I kind of look up to. I've had a few scrapes with him, a few scraps, but we were always brothers. And, if anybody can handle this type of, in the interim, what he has to deal with in this first couple of months, Steve McMichael is one of the toughest people I've ever met. So, I'll be thinking about him, you bet. And, I just want to say one thing about him. If you look at our defensive line, Richard Dent, Dan Hampton, got 2 Hall of Famers. In my opinion, there was a 4 or 5 year period there in the, I'd say mid 80s where nobody played the inside position better than Steve McMichael. So when you're thinking about Hall of Famers, have over 100 sacks from that inside position is pretty impressive as well. So I hope he gets the consideration that he deserves to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jerry, and then Patrick will close us out.
Thank you for a second opportunity, Jimbo. I was curious, what led you to become a member of Pitt's Board of Trustees? How did that all work out for you? And how do you like giving back to the university like that?
You know what, Jerry? When I was asked to go on the Board of Trustees of Pitt, I just felt it was such an honor because, I had an opportunity to play there. Pitt means the world to me. It's home. And, anything I can do to help them, kind of execute their strategic plan and, be one of the top tier universities in the country, I'm going to do that. So I just think it's quite an honor. If anybody had ever got an opportunity to be an athlete and play at the University of Pittsburgh, and now we got several other guys, and John Pelusi and Adam Walker and a couple, Tom Richards, who's our chair. We're all former athletes at Pitt, and I just think that when you can do something like that and give back, it just makes me feel like I'm doing my part.
Who first brought it up to you, Jimbo?
To be on the Board of Trustees?
Yes.
You know what? That's a good question. It's been so long now, but I just think there were, a few board members brought it up to me if I'd be interested in it, and I said yes. And then, it was several years later where I was approached to if I wanted to be on it, and I said absolutely. And then I've been there ever since. So,
thank you.
You bet.
Patrick, the last question is yours.
Jim, pardon the two-part question. First of all, what do you want people to know about the way you played the game? And secondly, when you get to the point where, I don't know whether you got to the point where you accepted the fact that the Hall of Fame might never happen. And if you did, how does that change your emotions when it does?
Wow. Well, I think the first one was, I've dealt with a lot of injuries in my career, and in the first couple, from kind of 83 through, almost the end of 87, I missed one game. So, and then boom, it just happened. So, I felt I was a pretty resilient guy, and then, things happened, and, after, from 88, 89, 90, I was never the same player I was earlier in my career. I just, just was injured in my back and everything like that. So I think if I have one thing to tell people, or remember, I left it all out on the field because, I certainly didn't, I played after back surgery 6 weeks later. That was probably not a very smart thing to do. I mean, I wouldn't take it back. I don't regret it, but those are the things I had to do to support my teammates and be a great teammate, great leader. So I did that. So I would just say, if I want someone to remember you, I just, I left it all on the field and tried the best I could. And the second part was?
The second part was, did you get to the point where you accepted that the Hall of Fame was never going to happen? And if so, how do you think that changed the way you processed it when it did?
I don't think it was acceptance. I just think it was, I tried to, get to the point where I almost tried to ignore it and maybe not think about it as much. It's always in the back of your mind, but maybe it was in the front of your mind before for many, many years. And then I just tried to almost ignore it. And when those, preliminary lists would come out and I'd be on it, and everyone would say, "Hey, congratulations, you're on the preliminary list." But there's a lot of people on the preliminary list. So when I wouldn't get to the semis and it was just the way it was, I just said, okay, just gonna have to look at this and say, if it happens, it happens, and be grateful that it does. And and I think the perspective was that I kind of felt that in my mind that I played as well as any tackle that played in the 80s. And I felt like that my my body of work in the 80s and how I played, at least from 83 through 87, I felt like I played as well as any tackle, maybe 20 years before that as well. So I felt that I wasn't not confident in my abilities. It's just it wasn't up to me. It wasn't it was somebody else's decision, and my duty was to control my own destiny. And I just felt like, well, it happens.
Good way to end, Jimbo, and we're glad it happened in Canton. We are looking forward to seeing you after a very long wait. the first week of August, and for your enshrinement on August 7th. Jimbo, thanks for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And
thank you, Rich. And I want to thank all the guys, all the writers that came on board, and thank them all for me, please. And looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
All right, Jimbo. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Thanks.